Greetings, everyone. My name's Stephen Neely. I'm your co-host for the Virtual Dalcroze Meetup. I think this is meetup number 67. There are 67 hours of these conversations, all archived at our website at virtualdalcroze.org. And we are thrilled to be with you here in February with a nice crowd, two really interesting presenters, and my dear friend and co-host, Veronica Bileski. If you look in the chat, you can find the agenda for today. Our routines are first to meet each other for a couple minutes. So I'm going to throw this group into, oh, I think we maybe now officially have enough people for two quick breakout rooms. So let me quickly make a breakout room. Here it comes. And we're going to create two. And when you get to the breakout room, our tradition has been from the beginning to introduce yourself. If you're willing, turn on your video, say where you're located and who do you teach? Either who do you teach or who did you used to teach or who might you teach or who do you work with or how'd you get here? But some version of all of that. So where are you located? What's your name? And who do you teach? Everybody has 2.5 minutes. That's it. And then we're going to be right back. Ready, set, go.
And I'm from Brazil.
Haniel, it's so nice to meet you. He's in Brazil. So we've got a
Likewise.
really nice crowd. We've got Australia and Brazil and the States.
And
And
Hong Kong.
welcome
Sylvia is in Hong Kong.
in Hong Kong. Who's in Hong Kong? Sylvia. What a great, see, this is it. This is the whole thing. Welcome to the International Virtual Dalcroze Meetup. We intentionally change our timings between the different meetups so that different people in different places can join us. And so how nice to have such an international crowd. Veronica, I know Veronica's been a little bit under the weather and might actually have to step out a little bit early tonight. Did you have any announcements or anything you wanted to share?
I will briefly say I'm happy to see you all. I will leave in a few minutes because I just need to go sleep. I'm gonna let Stephen do all the talking.
I got it. I got you. It's so generous of you to be here at all. Veronica has hardly missed a single one of the 67. I think she's probably been at 66 of the 67 meetups. And we're just really happy to have everybody together and to keep the conversations going. If you're new to Dalcroze, or if you've been in many of these conversations, there's always something here to pick up. And remind you, you can both go back to the meetup archives to just watch any of the prior conversations. And the descriptions of those are at our website, so you can see what was the topics. And then everybody is also welcome and encouraged to register for past master classes where you can really witness some of the teaching of this work. And those are also on a wide variety of topics. Before we get into the content tonight, if you've clicked on the agenda, I will just tell you we've got a couple announcements. The first is that we have meetups planned all the way through June to finish out this season. And so if you haven't subscribed to the calendar, we have two different little things you might subscribe to at the website. One is the mailing list. And if you subscribe to the mailing list, just put your email in. We don't spam you. We don't share the list, but we do send out reminders of these meetings with the links so that you always know what's the conversations coming up. And then the other thing you might sign up for at the website is if you go to the calendar page, there's a way to subscribe to the Virtual Dalcroze calendar, and it will not only tell you each of the events that are coming up, it'll also convert the time of the event to your time zone. And so you don't have to do the math and figure out is it daylight savings time or not. It'll always just tell you what time of day it is for you, and you'll know if you can make it. So we really encourage everybody to subscribe to the calendar and consider joining the mailing list. And thank you for that. At this point, our mailing list is something, it's like more than 650 people, and those are all just people who have opted in. We started at 0 3 years ago, and so we're really proud of the reach of this group and how many people we're in communication with. The second thing I want to remind everybody of is that we have some great master classes coming up. Sylvie Morganegg of Switzerland is going to be presenting in just 2 weeks at the beginning of March, March 2nd or 3rd, depending on where you are in the world. Sylvie is one of the longtime, very, very prestigious teachers at the Institut Jacques Dalcroze. She just retired from many years of teaching the professional students there, and I am just thrilled that she's coming. I've known her for many years. She's a lovely person and a real master teacher, and so I'm sure we're going to get to see some really classic Dalcroze instruction from just an outstanding musician. On that same day, starting on the same day, Veronica and Emma, my co-hosts and co-founders, they are offering a short course in Dalcroze entrepreneurship, building a community program. And so for any of you who are thinking, man, there's no Dalcroze in my community, and I'm just looking for ways that maybe you could help build something, either starting your own school from scratch or thinking of ways that you might collaborate with other schools that are in place, this is the short course for you. It'll be 6 sessions, 6 sessions over a couple, over just over a month. And I'm telling you, Veronica and Emma have been doing this exact kind of planning and practicing and have learned many lessons over the years. Show up and you will be able to learn from their many years of experience. They really have a lot to offer. So I'm personally very excited that they are offering that. Then in April, Fumiko Honda Bauer, who I bet most of you don't know. Fumiko was born in Japan, but has lived here in the States for many years. She's doing a master class in April. When we were thinking, one of our agendas for the master classes is trying to balance between sort of our famous teachers in the Dalcroze circles and outstanding musicians with lots of experience who maybe not as many people know. And Fumiko, I think, really hits that. I've known her for many, many years, and she's a brilliant pianist and a really talented musician who studied richly. She has the Dalcroze license from Carnegie Mellon, studied with Marta Sanchez. And Fumiko has been doing a lot of work with young children, and so she's planning a master class around some of those interactions. And so I'm so excited to introduce her to everyone. And then our last one is another teacher from Switzerland. Temay DeVoe is teaching in June, and I just met her for the first time this last summer. And I took her class, and I immediately was like, we have to get her to come and teach at the virtual Dalcroze meetup. She's a very exciting young teacher who does a lot of work with popular music of different sorts. The class that I took with her was all reggae based. She's just really cool and really exciting. And so I'm sure all of us will be thrilled to be at any of those. So subscribe to the calendar and consider registering for the master classes in the short course. All right, the plan today is we have two presenters who are with us. Danielle Miller of the United States, is going to speak with us just a little bit about her experience working with a student with dementia. And then our good friend from the beginning of the meetup, from some of our earliest meetups, Cindy Fox in Australia, is back, which we're really excited. And she's going to talk with us a little bit about some of the ways she includes improvisation in her studio teaching. And so our general format is to give everybody, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. I'll try to time you here, let you, share with us what you're thinking. And then we'll hold questions until both people have presented. And then we'll take the last 20 to, or so minutes that we have to talk about whatever everybody wants to talk about, to compare notes between the two presentations, and then maybe we want to get into some other things as well. So Danielle, I think you're first.
Right. Hi, everybody. So I was approached by a family who wanted singing lessons for their mother, who was 92 at the time. But they said, heads up, she has dementia. And what was interesting about this is that as she lost kind of more and more of her ability to speak, she started singing more. And so I thought this was intriguing, and we could use some Dalcroze principles, along with the singing lessons, and I just didn't know what it would look like at all, but I was intrigued. So the 93-year-old, I've been working with her. Well, now she's 93, so it's been just over a year. And we have a 30-minute lesson. And I kind of take the temperature of the room when I get there because I can tell if her caregivers have been struggling to get her to drink something or, like just is she more rattled or is she more calm? And so if she's rattled, I tend to start with just an instrumental. I'll play something on their piano and it kind of calls her in. And I'll notice her. I do the Dalcroze thing. Oh, Emily, you're tapping your feet. Great. Oh, I see the beat in your head. Wow, great moving. And so this can calm her even when she's agitated. Then we start to sing, and her catalog of songs, it's like the whole Rodgers and Hammerstein. It's just wonderful. So, especially The Sound of Music. So, I have a whole book of Sound of Music, and I don't know. At first, I thought, well, they want singing lessons, and it became very clear like Dalcroze was going to be more of it. She can go to a very interesting place. I've used some materials from Cynthia Lilly, does such beautiful work with orchestral, just analyzing orchestral great works. And so I've used some of her things, and actually one amazing lesson, it was the Brahms Variations on a Theme by Haydn. And we just sang the theme, and we had small hand drums, dun, 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 and we just followed through the variations. And the student, she was so, I don't know, she was so very far away somehow by the end of that, that I got a little worried actually that the music was so profoundly moving her beyond the words she had left. Like it was very intriguing. And I kind of called her back with a song from The Sound of Music, like just to make sure she was okay. And she was quieter, but happy, but I will say in a 30-minute lesson, whatever route it takes, she's always more verbal afterwards. She's able to communicate more clearly with her caregivers, and she's usually smiling. And she always asks me, "Have like who's paying you?" Like she's just so concerned that I'm getting compensated, and she's smiling and so happy by the end of it's like a 30-minute miracle. Some we move scarves with each other. And so I have a little portable, Bluetooth thing, which is wonderful. Oh, I did want to say when she's having a rough day, the music that really can help her and reach her is the stuff from her childhood. So she was born in 1930. So I go to the 20s and the teens. And these are the ones she knows the words. To many, she's like, da, 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 she wants to know the words, but they aren't there. But to the things that she learned as a child that were in the air when she was a child, she knows them. And I think that just inspires me in my work with children to make sure they have high quality material, because this is what's going to be there when they're old. Yeah, that's really my takeaway. So I've heard dementia likened to kind of like a handheld harp, and there's strings missing, but it doesn't mean the strings that are there can't play beautiful music. And so on some days, there's more strings gone than others. And she won't recognize a song that she did know a few weeks back, but it's not linear. I will say that. And sometimes the songs are there. And it is a little funny, but there's so many lyrics that are actually quite ironic for dementia, like who knows where or when, or, so I'm just containing my laughter, but we sang the Great American Songbook and Rodgers and Hammerstein and, yeah, and you know what? This woman happens to be one of the very first female rabbis in the whole world. And I've tried to go into religious music. It doesn't mean much to her, except maybe Hava Nagila, but no, it's the Rodgers and Hammerstein catalog that really is her sweet spot. And it's just been interesting. Sometimes we'll dance a little bit, she's in her chair, I'm on the piano bench, and just holding bean bags, helps bridge that intimacy gap, so she'll hold the bean bags and I'll, so we are dancing, but it's not too intimate, because these are songs she danced to her sweetheart with, or, so, yeah, it's been just a musical journey. Of course, I'm a sucker for pop songs from 120 years ago. So, and I think that's about it. I have to stay flexible. It's very intriguing what hits the right spot. And sometimes it's just heartfelt, beautiful things. Other times it's just bouncy swing music and I see her feet going, and so I just try as a Dalcrozian to go with what I see at that moment. And she loves tapping a drum along, and we do quick reaction exercises. That's kind of fun, where she'll echo, or I'll hear something she played and I'll play it. And so I am kind of using the Dalcroze toolkit
It's
to
so wonderful.
interact.
What a lovely story. And I think that there's a good chance that Rodgers and Hammerstein will be also my songbook someday. Will be the songs that I'm, the ones that I'll be most likely to remember. I am also a big fan of the American Songbook and of so much of that repertoire.
Yep.
Just hearing you talk, I'm sure we're going to have more to discuss here and have questions and ideas about it.
Yep.
And it very much does. I think we could easily. I think we will take a little bit of time just to talk about what do we mean by a Dalcroze pedagogy? Like, what does that even, like, what might that even mean to somebody? And I think what you're hinting at is very much in line with what I'm thinking. Veronica, we see you, and thanks for being here. Okay, we're gonna pause on Danielle and just so get your thoughts about what we might want to ask or talk about or get her to talk more about. And we're going to switch gears into something else. Cindy's with us from Australia, where it's like lunchtime, and it's not too hot in Australia today on Tuesday. So tomorrow, I'm getting ready for my not too hot day and tomorrow in Pittsburgh. So Cindy, thank you so much for joining us, for being here. Talk to us a little bit about improvisation.
Well, welcome from the future. I can tell you that your Tuesday is going to be just excellent. I'm living in your future, you're in my past, so it's a good time coming. I just wanted to give you a quick context of where I work. So unlike many of you probably, I live in quite a small community. There's only 45,000 people in my town. The closest Dalcrozer is 3 hours drive. The others are either 12 hours drive up to Brisbane, 10 hours drive down to Melbourne, or if I wanted to go to Perth to my Dalcroze bestie, it would take me 3 days to drive there. Basically the width of America. So the distances in Australia are quite immense, and they certainly change the way we practice in our communities. I think I might be the only regional Dalcroze practitioner of any kind in Australia. So that's one way to be unique, I guess. But it does offer many things. It offers me the opportunities to have a really diverse musical life. So most of my money is made by teaching piano, but I also teach early childhood music. I'm currently musical director for Witches of Eastwick. There's a local production being put on, and I'm also playing for it, as well as conducting with my elbows. I like to call them my jigglewinks. I'm also performing next week in a local musical comedy. I'm performing on violin for that one, which is exciting. And then in a few weeks' time, I am singing in a local art installation. It's a multimedia installation. There'll be music, there'll be movement, there'll be art, all of these kinds of things happening in one performance. So although I'm kind of isolated from other Dalcroze people, I have this wonderful community, and I have a wide range of things that I get to do. Now onto my actual topic, term challenges. So in Australia, we usually divide our year, our school year, into 4 terms of 10 weeks each. I was astonished when I heard that you have 2 semesters of 20 weeks each. I was like, wow, I don't even understand how you can get through that much time. I definitely need a break after 10 weeks. So I created these term challenges to give my students a longitudinal experience across those 10 weeks. Like a kind of mini topic we could do at the beginning of each piano lesson. That would only take around 5 minutes, so didn't cut into all the other important things, but gave them particular skills that I felt you can't teach if you're just teaching repertoire and technical work. So these challenges combine oral skills, rhythmic skills, theory and improvisation into one. And I'm going to tell you about the current challenge that we've just started 3 weeks ago. So we are working on everybody in the world's favourite chord progression, 1, 6, 4, 5. What I like to think of as the vanilla chord progression, because you can put literally anything with it and it still works. Great, you're in C major, stick in an F sharp. Cool, that sounds great. You can put whatever you like with it and it'll sound good. Like mixing your vanilla ice cream with, raspberries or Turkish delight or whatever you want to put in there. So I love the flexibility that comes from this very basic chord progression. So this challenge of mine happens studio-wide. So from my beginners who are 5 years old, or sometimes as young as 4, to my student, my oldest student, I believe is 80 or 84, one of them. Can't remember how old they are. So everybody does the same challenge, so it's graded across. For some students, they will learn to play rhythm patterns on each note. So I might give them a really simple rhythm like ta, ti, ti, ta, ti, ti, and they'll play that first on a C, and then they'll play it on an A, then an F, then a G. For my next level up, we kind of use the block chords. Once we've done that, we start working on inversions. What kind of bassline patterns can you use? Can you improvise over the top? Can you make a little melody? Can you have a rhythm pattern given to you, create a melody for the right hand while playing the chords in the left hand? Can you transpose it? Now, because I'm only 3 weeks into this challenge, I don't know where they're all going to get to. But the wonderful thing about having a cross-studio challenge is that I know everybody's getting the same kind of material at their own level, and I can just kind of keep track of it really easily in my own brain. Some of the past challenges that I've used have been things like pick 4 notes from a chromatic scale. Those are your notes to make your melody. Right, now what can we do with those notes? Will they become a melody? Will they become your chord progression? Will they become your tonal centers for different sections of a piece? So it's trying to find these, I guess, just slightly left of field ways of getting my students into improvisation and composition and giving them different experiences that they probably won't get. They definitely won't get at school. And given I'm often their only music for the week, apart from if they're in high school, they might have music at school. I just like to give them different ways to think about it, because in my studio, I have kids who love playing classical music and they want to learn everything from reading. I have students who, well, they have not played a classical piece for most of their time with me. And they do not like reading music. They learn most of their things by ear. I have a growing population of neurodivergent students, and I have quite a few adults, many of which are well into their 70s now, who are starting piano. So it's trying to find these interesting ways to give everybody something that's interesting to learn and to create a challenge that can be useful for every single student I've got, I guess. And that's really everything.
So great. Thank you so much. There's again, both of these. I love the virtual Dalcroze meetup. The conversations, the people we seem to attract have always got something going, and it's so easy to then think about ways that we might extend it, both ask some extra questions and then think about ways that we might extend it. So before I just talk through this whole next, we have a little less than half an hour. We have a smaller group tonight. But I would love to just see, is there any of our friends here have any questions or any comments about either Danielle's work or Cindy's work? Um, so I'll just open the floor here to get it started. Any thoughts to get going? Go ahead, Cindy.
I loved your work, Danielle. There's a wonderful book called The Changing Mind by Daniel Levitan, all about the brain as it ages. And there's a wonderful section in there. Well, I'm only halfway through, but there's a lot of information in there about the way dementia happens and how it takes some bits of memory from particular parts that age more rapidly. And then other things, like, as you were saying, the childhood things remain. I just thought that's really fascinating, because I can imagine if I keep getting this aging population of students, this is going to come up at some stage. So it's really good to hear the kinds of things that have worked for you.
There's more and more context or examples of specifically Dalcroze interventions with older populations. This was something that 20 years ago, I knew of one class in Geneva, and it was quite popular, and it was, it was there, and it was the only one I was aware of. And ever since, that one has sort of started to be publicized a little bit, and they actually did some actual scientific study, where they brought in researchers who were comparing those seniors head to head with seniors who were doing other things. These classes have started really to take hold. And I know in our town that if I just had 6 more Dalcroze teachers who are interested in working with older populations, we could probably pay everybody's rent. Like, there's work, there's work, there's interest. These are really at least here in the States, it's a more and more of an aging population. And actually, in my county in Pennsylvania, I'm pretty sure I have the statistic right. We're the oldest county in the United States. We have more old people in Pittsburgh than anywhere else in the Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, the same area as Pittsburgh, than anywhere, even in some of those, even in even Florida, which everybody jokes in the States as being the place where everybody goes to retire. So there's a lot of call. So under the entrepreneurship heading, I keep trying to tell everybody, look, if you're looking for work, you really should get to talking with some of our colleagues who are working with older populations, because there really are things. And we have been featuring older adult demo classes at Carnegie Mellon every summer for the last many years. Annabelle Joseph did it first. Leslie Upchurch has been doing it recently. And they're all extremely well attended, and everybody's very interested. And the couple times that I've taught those classes, I got to tell you, it is the most enjoyable. Like, least stress, nicest people, easy work, and to make any progress at all is to make amazing progress. Like, it's not like you have to like prepare for some big recital or something. Like, so just such lovely time trying to figure it out. I could keep rambling, but I don't know if Danielle wants to throw in just other ideas, or if anybody else here has questions. I would love to talk, Danielle, just a little bit about, well, can we just brainstorm the teeniest bit? What other sorts of things have you been doing? Are there other exercises either that you can tell us that you have been doing, or do you have guesses of other things you might like to get into?
if she was more verbal, um, and she's easily confused, so some days the scarves are really intriguing, and the other days she's like, and she can't really voice her protest, but I can sense it,
Right.
and okay, goes away. Um, oh, I will also say, I forgot to say, sometimes I can coax her onto the piano bench with me, and I'll just suggest all the black keys sound great together, and I will play some of Ann Farber's like accompaniments, and she'll just make a melody on black
Oh,
keys. It works beautifully. I've done who's the other Stephen? The other Stephen Moore, right?
yeah, Stephen Moore.
Has a activity with tennis ball, and we've done this too, where a tennis ball on the black keys, you can, and I'll play a blues, underneath, and you can really get some beautiful things. And I'm just I mean, I can tell my student had been an orchestra subscription holder, had been so cultured, so it's just all there and it comes out. But then sometimes she's very critical and upset with herself, and so it's like therapy and
Wow.
music all in one. So
I think one of the things that I was thinking about when you were talking, but I think it also easily applies with Cinti, is this idea of what is a Dalcroze pedagogy? Like is so and I'm also always trying to think about that I know people attend live, but also watch these videos after the fact, and not everybody has the training or would recognize the names that Danielle is listing out as we're going, and so there's two ways that we might think about, at least two ways we might think about Dalcroze pedagogy. One would be that we have these kind of standard kinds of exercises. For instance, there's this title of the quick reaction, and there's the follow, and there's the replacement and the canon, and there's certain sort of like classic interactions that, yeah, if you go to a handful of classes, you're going to bump into these things and you'll hear people use them. Those are really amazing, and by all means watch some other meetups, and I'm sure we'll get into defining what some of those classic kinds of interactions are. But then there's this other idea which Daniel really was exemplifying, and I see it coming out in Cindy's work too, which is just, well, I'm not quite sure what we're going to do. I'm not quite sure where Cindy's improv is going to end up, or Danielle not quite sure what the exercise of the day is. And that mentality, I think, is really surprising to some other traditions of music education. And yet I think of it as quite central to a Dalcroze philosophy or a Dalcroze mindset. We of course are going to try to show up prepared with some ideas and ready to go, but we don't actually know quite often where it's going to take us until we meet our students, until we see what they're up for, what they're able to do. And they don't have to be a student with dementia. This is true of all of our students. When it's, to me, the purest or the most ideal version of a Dalcrozian mindset is that we of course show up prepared, but we don't really know what's going to hit or what's be most appropriate or what potential we might have a chance to unlock until we actually get into tune with whoever the current body of students are, whether it's one-on-one or it's with the group. And that takes a kind of humility, where I can't just ramrod this at you. I got to wait and see what is going to make sense to you. And so I'm waiting to see what hits, what's exciting, what it makes you think of, and in what ways I can get you to actually help me co-design the lesson that we're jumping into, which Danielle was showing all sorts of versions of that. So there was just to define one little bit that Danielle said, there's a kind of a classic interaction in a lot of our classes where we'll throw out a prompt and then we see how do the students react to the prompt, and then we point to the solution they came up with. So it could be anything like how might a giraffe move, or what would be a shoulder motion that would go with this little lick of melody, or it could be something very open ended, And then we think, oh, look at so and so. Show us what you're doing right there. And then we let the student show us what they invented that fulfilled the prompt. Then we all try to do it. And then quite often the classic solution is then the teacher goes to the piano or their instrument and they try to accompany it. And so not only does it let us all practice it, but it validates the creativity and the risk that the student was taking. And so for Danielle's student to tap her toe, and if Danielle can just notice, oh, look, you're tapping your toe. That's amazing. Let's tap our toes. And so we all tap our toe. And then maybe we find music that is at the tempo of the student as opposed to the tempo that I walked in with. This song must be in The Sound of Music, they sang it at this tempo. But if that's not the tempo that the student is tapping their toe at, the Dalcrozian has no trouble changing the tempo and will want to make it match the student. And if we can find the commonality between us and them and the music, then we've actually created some kind of entrainment or something collective. And then with our more advanced students, we would start with something they do easily. And then we think, well, how can I broaden it? So maybe we would mess with the tempo and try to get it a little faster, a little slower, and see if we can get them to adjust. Or maybe we would use it as the sort of the underlying current of something else we're going to layer on top of. But it's always trying to start from the student. And so I just really appreciated so much of that instinct in what Danielle's describing. Cindy, I heard some of that in what you were doing as well when you said, well, I kind of know how we've started, but I'm not quite sure we're going to end up. Can you talk a little bit about where might you end up, or in your past challenges, how far how how far have they gone? Have they surprised you at any point, or you ended up someplace you didn't think you would get to?
Well, they always surprise me. As you were saying, flexibility. I think flexibility is the thing I most appreciate about Dalcroze, beyond all of those other things, because the flexibility doesn't just come through in the teaching and the learning, it actually transitions to the rest of life. Oh, sure, this terrible thing has happened. Great, I'll just take my life down this path, or, this thing has happened. So it becomes not just a flexibility within the teaching space, but it kind of just spills over into everything else you do. So from these past challenges that I've done with students, sometimes we've done modal challenges. We did a Phrygian challenge a few years ago. So it's just such a beautiful scale. So it was just coming up with melodies to start with. And then some of my students got really into it. And one of them wrote a composition. She wrote the whole thing down, performed it at a local music festival, and won a prize for her composition, which was really great. Other students who had been absolutely terrified of making things up on their own because, well, you can be wrong, can't you? If you're making something up, if you're not following the dots on the page, you can be wrong. Discovered that actually sometimes the notes that we think are wrong are the ones that sound the best, the most interesting. So it's helped them develop a little bit of flexibility. I'm sure you all come across the same thing. Some students are so free and they need a little bit of grounding, they need a little bit of structure to help them solidify ideas they have. Other students are so rigid that the concept of maybe making a mistake stops them from experiencing any new things in music. So it's wonderful doing these improv challenges and just pushing the ones who are very rigid to, I would give them something if they're really afraid of it. I would give them exactly what they need to play, and then challenge them to change just one thing. Oh, change one note. Oh, what would you do? Could you do a little tiny bit of the rhythm differently? Could you do some quavers at the end, some eighth notes, sorry, America, some eighth notes at the end instead of a quarter note? Can you just change one tiny thing? And just helping them to find some ways of flexibility in their life. Is what I like to do, because I always think, and I always say to the parents, I'm not just training your child for music. Hopefully, I'm training them for life through music. And I think that's one thing that Dalcroze does really beautifully. These students might not be professional musicians. They might not play once they leave school. But what have I given them through this improv and through this way of learning that can help make, hopefully, the rest of their life improved?
I think that's when you know you're really becoming, that's when you can call yourself a Dalcrozian, this is my opinion, is when you start to see the lessons transcend music. And so I'm only just being a little bit silly with that statement, but there is anybody who spends enough time in these routines, to me, you can't not. I wrote a whole PhD about it. Like it's everything I think about. The original quote, which I'm sure we've said multiple times in these meetups, is that Jacques Dalcroze called the work an education in and through music. So the education in music is, well, we're learning basics of music. We're learning the nuts and bolts and the basic concepts of musicianship. So that's the teaching in music. But then the teaching through music, we are using music to know other things. And so whether it's therapeutic sorts of results, or it's know something about myself, it's learn how to take a risk, it's learn how to share, it's learn how to take turns, it's learn how to collaborate, it's learn how to notice others. I mean, the list goes just on and on and on. And this kind of teaching, where it really is being somewhat discovered in the class or in the interaction, really opens itself to that. And then the notion that our answers are bodied. Like, I'm not doing something outside of my body or not something disembodied. It's not just a disembodied thinky, just, oh, it's only up here. But the kinds of ways that we're asking people to participate are actually trying to invite the whole them to be a part of it. And so it becomes quite profound quite quickly. I'm quite convicted that you can't spend too much time in these interactions and not have it start to transcend and comment on other parts of your life, which to me has made it all the more sustainable all these years. Like, it's still quite invigorating to be in these environments. Um, uh, I'm happy to keep leading and getting Danielle and Cindy to talk about the things I want to talk about. I don't know, we do have a small crowd today, so I don't know if anybody else has anything that you wanted to comment or made you think of, or you wanted to ask a question. I'll give you another moment. I have a sip of my tea. Go ahead, Sylvia, and welcome. Welcome to Hong Kong.
I'd like to ask Cindy, can you tell more about how to train the student they only use a ear, only by hearing, not reading?
So that's it's a very long process which starts right from my very, very beginning students. When we start, we learn kind of maybe one note on the piano per week. We'll kind of really focus in on that. So right from the beginning, it'll be things like making a composition on one note. Find all the dogs on the piano. Okay, now we're going to make a composition out of them, and I'll accompany it, and I'll only play just Ds as well. And we start by just using one sound to make a composition. Then it translates into things like, I'll play them a tiny little pattern. First of all, can you hum it back? Okay, all right, let's see if you can play it back now. Of course, with these patterns, they are always things that they've played on the piano first. So every time I teach a piece to a beginner, we do it in so many different ways that by the time they come to read the music and play it, they know that pattern inside out. And then I would play that pattern on the piano, not showing them, for them to copy with their ears. And of course they can already copy it because they've already done it in the piece of music. So then it's kind of translating from there through to new things. So letting them really find that established ground level first, and then building up from there. Some of my senior students can't play by ear. They are totally in the world of reading music, and no matter what the things we've done over the years, it just hasn't translated. Other students are the total opposite. I could play them anything and they would be able to play it back almost instantly, but they can't read music very well. And I think that's just a difference in the way different brains, I guess, access and process music. And when I first started teaching, I used to fight against it. I'd be like, no, everyone should learn to read. How else are you going to learn music? And over the years, I've come to realize that actually, I would much prefer my teaching to be democratic, available to everybody. Anyone can learn how to play the piano, anyone can learn music. I will fit myself to the student's way of learning, obviously trying to help them in their weak areas, but do I really need all my students to be amazingly proficient readers, or do I need all of my students to be finding joy in music? I'm not sure if that actually answered your question, but that's kind of how I start, and then who knows where it goes from there.
Finding joy in music, I think, reigns as maybe the primary goal of most all of the Dalcroze work. And then whether it matters that somebody reads or doesn't read or is ever introduced to the dotted 8/16 or the whatever rhythm or isn't by name, to me really just has everything to do with the trajectory that they've signed up for. So if they're involved in a certain program that claims to get them ready for college auditions, then yeah, there are certain tasks that they're going to need, certain skills they'll need to be aware of. And if they're not, if they're involved in a more community space, or if it's really just for the hobby version, let alone for working with a 94-year-old who has very different goals, so many different things can matter or not matter. And so it's what seems to always matter is that we find some joy in the work. And the wording I like to use with my students is that we strive to feel more deeply. And so rather than a shallow interaction with our music, we're trying to really make it quite personal, quite intimate, quite deeply understood. And I mean, I need slightly different language for different crowds, but what I'm always thinking of is how might we feel or experience our music more deeply. And so, and those are that, and the idea of just joy in the music are about as high up as I think we can wish for in the work. Sylvia, it's a wonderful question, thinking about how and when and what techniques we might learn to play by ear. Improvisation is is one of the biggest sort of traditions or traditional aspects of a Dalcroze education. And to me, that has everything in common with playing by ear. So there's a version of playing by ear, which is I heard the melody and I can recreate it, or I heard the melody that someone else composed and I can figure it out. And then there's sort of the flip side of, to me, kind of a very similar skill set is I have sounds in my head that I can make come out. They're like, I didn't actually compose them, but I hear them as they come and I can slowly find my way to them. And I think those skill sets, not exactly the same, but I think they're quite similar, using a very similar kind of exploration and freedom at the instrument. And so improvisation as a exercise or series of exercises is a extremely common kind of interaction in most all of our settings. And so we might look for the different line between what do we mean by play by ear, and how much, like when I'm improvising and when I'm teaching improvisation, there is a kind of reading, but it's not normally read the the 4-part harmony that are written out in the full score. It's much closer to, can you read the jazz chart or the musical theater chart of chord symbols or chord titles. So when Cindy described, oh, we're going to do the 1-6-4-5 progression, I don't think of that under the same exact heading as the most structured reading of notes. And yet it's a very liberating kind of pattern to start to discover, which can open up all sorts of play by ear or what have you. So that part of it, it's deep in our traditions, I think. We have just 5 minutes. See how quick it goes. We're just getting going. Anybody else have another question or comment before we got time for one or two? Go, Deb. Deb, you're in Colorado, right?
I'm in Colorado.
That's what I thought.
Boulder, East. So it just reminded me of some work we did years ago, actually in the 80s, with the Orff Schul work in the senior living in homes. Wow. And took in percussion instruments and took in xylophones and metallophones. And, the Orff is, of course, different from Dalcroze, but we share a lot of the movement, the improvisation on the pentatonic scales. And it was really a phenomenal experience. We actually wrote something up about it, which would be in one of the Orff Echoes probably back in the 80s, but it would be totally relevant if I could find it, because the nurses would find out that some of their residents, they had no idea what their skills were And one woman would actually, when we were improvising, she wanted to go to the piano, and so we took her to the piano, and she would play everything we were improvising on the piano, or she would play every song, and the nurses had no idea that she had those, that she had been a pianist. And
Wow.
some, it's like kind of grumpy old guys, all of a sudden they would just come to life and then wouldn't want you to leave. And so it really woke up the room. And of course, you had to deal with mobility issues and hearing because some of a lot of the exercises that we used with children, we could just adapt them for that generation beautifully.
Sure.
And
Well,
even
that's
some of the same.
wonderful. I would love to hear more stories about Orff work with anybody older than sixth grade. So if you have more stories about that, Deb, we'll have to have you come back and talk with us a little bit about that, whether it's with
Yeah,
older adults or any other ages. Because I've heard almost no stories of
yeah,
that work, and I would love to learn more about that. I think that would be
sure, definitely.
applicable. Be, yeah, I think that would be applicable here. Also, the idea of exercises that work for kids working for other ages. I mean, that's in
Yeah,
and through the Dalcroze work. I mean, I'm right now, my university students are invited to come watch Anthony Molinaro teach 5-year-olds this coming weekend. And I said, I have no idea what he's going to do, but I bet that what he's doing with them are things that you and I have done. Like, it's so like the 5-year-old classes and my 20-year-old classes have so many things in common over and over. It's crazy. Like, it really doesn't have to be anything more than that. These basic interactions, um, fit, and they just fit throughout. Well, friends,
one quick
yes,
question for
please,
Cindy.
Deb.
Which town you're in, because I lived north of Brisbane, in Rockhampton, but I was curious what your town was.
I live in a town called Bathurst.
Bathurst.
Uh,
I know Bathurst. Okay.
Very low Rockhampton.
Like Rockhampton, because it was about 40,000 back in the 60s, late 60s. So
How about that? It's such a small world. And here we are all together in all these different corners. Friends, thank you so much for showing up. It's lovely to have the conversation. We try to always start on time and end on time because we hope you'll come back. We also expect that there was more, and that when you close the link, you'll think, "Oh man, I wish we would have asked this question or that question," or get into more. So please reach out to me or Veronica or Emma at any point. Reach out to Cindy and Danielle, and if you need help making connection, please just let me know. And if you have more questions or want to do more, if you have suggestions or requests, or yourself have a 5 or 10 minute little bit that you might share about your practice, we're really interested in talking about it. We would love to know what you do, and the ways that you are either doing really traditional Dalcroze work, or you're doing something that you think maybe is similar, or you're doing something that you think is not Dalcroze, but it's complementary in any way. We love talking about all of it. I think each of our practices have really been enriched by being in these conversations. And thank you for being here. Cindy, it's so great to see you. I hope that we'll see you again. And the work sounds great. We could have talked for easily another hour. I want to know about all your other challenges. There's the Phrygian challenge, and there's the vanilla chord progression challenge. So like, what else? They're like, we got to get you back and make you tell us more about those. And Danielle, the work that you're doing just is absolutely beautiful. And thank you for being willing to just tell us about it. And what I love about that kind of story particularly is just that it reminds me of what's possible, and what's right there. And it seems so obvious once you say it. And yet, because I'm not really in that teaching cycle, it doesn't, like, I forget just the things you can do, and what impact it is. And my favorite thing that Danielle said tonight, which I think will apply to all of us, was that is that her student was remembering these songs from her childhood, which made her rethink how profound is it that we're teaching children these songs. Like, we're creating a kind of learning that is embedded in a place of our brain that sticks with us differently than something we learned yesterday. And so I think that's really a lovely lovely thing to think about, and think about how powerful we really are as music teachers. So thank you for the hard work and the good work, and thanks to all of you. And have a good evening or morning. Haniel, go get some sleep. It's 11. It's almost midnight there. And Cindy, have a good rest of your second half of your day. And everybody else, thank you so much. Subscribe to the calendar, and we'll see you back soon. Bye-bye.